Look up at the ceiling fan in your living room, and you'll likely notice a thick gray fuzz caked along the edges of the blades. It sits there, tightly bound to the surface, despite the fan spinning for hours. This contradicts our macroscopic understanding of how motion works. When you drive down a highway, the wind strips loose debris off your car. If you put a loose object on a rapidly spinning merry-go-round, rotational inertia flings it outward. Yet on a fan blade slicing through the air at high speed, the dirt stays put. The confusion comes from how we perceive our environment. We navigate the world treating air as an empty, frictionless void. But air is a fluid. It is comprised of billions of gas molecules, and it has measurable mass and viscosity, meaning it has internal friction and thickness, much like water or syrup. To see the mechanism at work, we have to move past human-scale intuition and shrink down to the microscopic level. At this scale, the air behaves like a thick, sticky syrup, governed by forces that remain invisible to the naked eye. From our perspective, a plastic or wooden fan blade looks perfectly smooth. Down at the microscopic level, that same surface is a jagged, mountainous landscape filled with peaks, valleys, and chemical imperfections. When air molecules collide with this rugged terrain, they don't bounce off cleanly. They get physically trapped in the microscopic roughness. Because of this atomic friction, the layer of air directly touching the solid surface gets dragged along at the exact same speed as the spinning blade. Relative to the blade, the airspeed in that immediate layer is exactly zero. Fluid dynamicists call this the no-slip condition. Moving away from the surface, the air velocity eventually has to transition back up to the fast-moving ambient speed of the room. This thin, highly stratified transition zone is known as the boundary layer. The boundary layer concept was introduced in 1904 by German physicist Ludwig Prandtl. His work mapped exactly how viscous forces dominate the thin region of fluid right next to a solid surface, providing the first mathematical bridge between theoretical fluid equations and real-world aerodynamic drag. This graph illustrates Prandtl's math in action. Directly at the surface, the air velocity is zero. Across a distance of just a few millimeters, the speed curves smoothly outward until it reaches the maximum free stream velocity of the surrounding wind. The boundary layer creates a microscopic sanctuary of absolute aerodynamic calm right on the blade. If a tiny piece of dust can manage to get inside that layer, the fan's wind can never reach it. So how does the dust get inside that calm layer? As the fan blade slices forward, the thick fluid of the air is forced to split, creating pressure waves that curve sharply around the solid profile. Airborne dust particles possess their own mass and forward momentum. When those sharply curving air currents try to pull the particles out of the way, the heavier dust specks have too much inertia to make the turn. They break free from the fluid flow and continue moving straight ahead. This mechanism is called inertial impaction. In this technical schematic, fluid streamlines curve upward, while heavy particles punch straight through to collide directly with the solid rectangular body. Engineers calculate this collision behavior using the Stokes number, represented by the parameter k. It pits the particle's forward inertia against the fluid drag trying to pull it away. A high Stokes number means the particle ignores the wind and crashes into the surface. This is exactly why the dust builds up aggressively on the leading edge of your fan blade. That edge acts as the primary crash zone. Inertial impaction breaches the windless sanctuary, allowing the dust to make contact. But arriving at the surface is only half the equation. The dust still has to survive the mechanical forces of the spinning blade. Even tucked safely away from the wind, the blade is still rotating. That means centrifugal force is constantly pulling at the dust, trying to hurl it outward toward your walls. But as the fan blade rubs against air molecules and airborne particles, it strips electrons away from them. This friction generates a localized static electric charge right on the leading edge of the blade, a process known as the triboelectric effect. Household dust is largely a cocktail of dead skin cells and fabric fibers. When these particles enter the blade's intense electric field, the charges within their molecules shift, creating what's known as an invised dipole. This essentially turns every speck of dust into a tiny reactive magnet that snaps onto the charged surface. This diagram shows the resulting tug-of-war. Horizontally, a weak mechanical centrifugal force tries to throw the particle off.
pointing straight down is a massive electrostatic attraction, acting like an inescapable molecular glue, pinning the dust to the blade. At the human scale, mass determines how things move, but for a microscopic speck of dust, mass is essentially zero. At that size, surface area-dependent forces, like static electricity and moisture surface tension, become stronger than rotational inertia. The fan operates as a giant electrostatic magnet. It hunts particles out of the air via high-speed impaction, and then permanently locks them down with an intense static grip that the fan's mechanical centrifugal force simply cannot break. You don't need a multi-million-dollar wind tunnel to see advanced fluid dynamics at work. Every time you look up at a dirty ceiling fan, you are witnessing a demonstration of boundary layer mechanics and electrostatics operating right above your couch. This physics explains why taking a dry duster to a ceiling fan is ineffective. A dry sweep only shears off the loose top layers of dirt. It leaves the electrostatically charged base layer intact on the blade. To reset the surface, you have to use a damp cloth or a solvent. The liquid breaks the microscopic capillary bonds and dissolves the static friction matrix holding the dust down, allowing you to wipe the blade clean. Interestingly, grounded metal fans don't build up the same static charge, meaning they collect far less dirt than plastic or wooden versions. The physics of your home are hidden everywhere if you know where to look. Subscribe for more.